Welcome Wayne Carey to the BackPageLead Vidcast.
Charlie,
how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Plenty has happened. Oh, look, the perils of live vidcast. The phone's gone off again.
That's all right.
Plenty has happened since we met last Monday.
Mm-hmm.
2 coaches have been sacked in 6 days. Neil Craig, obviously, and Dean Bailey yesterday. What's going on? I mean, these guys copping it in the neck for their players' insipid performances.
First time in history, 2 coaches in 2 weeks. Neil Craig obviously not being sacked, but I wouldn't think that, I would have thought it would be a mutual agreement, so we can say put it under maybe not the sacked category, but it is unbelievable, and I'm big on this. I think that yes, okay, the coach, this thing about coaches' messages not getting through, well, the one thing about Melbourne all year has been the yo-yo type performances, and that's up and down. They have been insipid some weeks and very good in other weeks, and on the weekend they hit rock bottom, didn't they?
They set a new low.
Now, is that the coach's fault? I say not. I say that they have to take ownership of that performance, and they come out in the press and they say all the right things, the standard things to say. We've got to take responsibility. The coach will leave, as Neil Craig did last week, and the Crows get up and win. Now, that's got nothing to do with the coach. That's got to do with how they prepare upstairs. That is a mental state, and for that reason, if you're Neil Craig, you'd be just utterly disappointed. As I'm sure Dean Bailey's been utterly disappointed at times this year when they've been up and then down. There's no words to explain that type of performance and how you can go or get that bad in a short space of time, because that was as bad as you get. That was a training run for the Cats, and Melbourne, they'll appoint a new coach, and then Melbourne will come out and sort of perform okay. Well, you'd expect them to perform okay on the back of that, which is terrible, because the players have to take responsibility. If I was at Melbourne and I was in charge of that particular club, so they have to appoint a new coach, I would be dropping as many players as possible this week. And if that means they've got 40 on the list and they can drop, and they've got a few injuries, they can drop 13 or 14 players, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be going into this week's round with the reserve grade side and making a point that they just don't stand for those type of performances. Okay, they don't stand for it from a coaching point of view, don't stand from a player's point of view, and drop as many as you possibly can. Because there were no shining lights in that.
Have you ever seen a more meek, timid performance from an AFL team?
No, I haven't. And look, we've all been on the back of some poor losses. Yep. I don't think I've ever seen a more insipid performance than that. 20 goals up until half time to 1. I mean, it's just...
You see that in under 12, don't you?
It really was. And that is just mental preparation. That's not a physical thing. That's not a coaching thing. That's not facilities. That's not any of that. That is mental application, and they failed in every way.
The odd thing to me is that the Melbourne players seem to have a decent relationship with Bailey, and there's never been any open discontent with the way
they might have a great relationship with Dean Bailey, but they certainly don't respect him, because if they respected him, they wouldn't serve that crap up.
Yep, fair call. So Craig and Bailey are paying the price for their players' pitiful performances.
Well, exactly. I mean, the Crows have a good win on the weekend off the back of a coach resigning. I mean, that shows you that it is a mental application, and that's all it is. And on the back of that, Dean Bailey. I mean, would have I sacked him after that? In some ways, you sort of hope. Well, I hope that they don't, because then they cop the wrath of what they served up on the weekend and what they should cop, rather than a new coach coming in and probably them getting let off the hook, as they so often do.
Is Brad Green the right captain?
Absolutely. I think Brad Green's the right captain. I think Brad Green he's had his troubles at the start of the year. He's a new captain. He's probably worried about at the start. The team performance, which took off a little bit, not worrying so much about his own performance. Hence, that's probably altered a little. But I think his form has been a little bit like Melbourne. Has been a little bit up and down. But when you're playing forward, and a bit more permanently forward to what he has previously, you're dictated to by how the side's going, and their side has been struggling.
Let's look to 2012 and beyond. What sort of coach do they need to take that young list? And it's a list full of good high draft picks too, isn't it?
The way the point I'm trying to make is the way they played on the weekend. You could have Paul Roos, Mick Malthouse, and Kevin Sheedy all at that club, and they would be terrible. It's not a coach. Don't chase the next coach and think you're going to turn that club around, because it's the players that need to be turned around, not the coaches.
But they do need a new coach.
They do need a new coach, and you'd obviously be trying to get the best one you can.
You've always been a Paul Roos fan,
just like Adelaide. I think Paul Roos is probably the best coach out of the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think he stated that he doesn't want to coach. I'm sure $1.5 million would probably talk him out of that. Per season, exactly. Well, what do you think I was talking? 3-year deal.
Week. Just had a debt demolition campaign, Melbourne. I don't know if they can afford that sort of money.
Well, I think, yeah. Like I said, it wouldn't matter if they got Paul Roos. Would he turn that club around? Not on that performance. Not on that performance. He'd have to have a lot of psychologists in there working on their head.
We'll see. They need a coaching panel as good as Essendon's, is that what you're saying? Which is $8 million a year.
Like you put the best coaching panel in place, and unless they mentally prepare correctly, physically they're as good as, I'm sure they're prepared as well as anyone. It's a mental. It's all above the shoulders.
So you just got to work out which 12 to drop this week.
Which 12 to drop? That's their question. Like I said, I'd be dropping as many as possible that's on that list. As many as that can come in, I'd be dropping this week. And for anyone that thinks Melbourne mathematically can still make the 8, well, stop dreaming.
But they can. I mean, their run home is... They've got Richmond... Look at this. Richmond, Gold Coast and Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
They'll win those 3, won't they?
Oh, who knows? If they prepare correctly, they have a chance. But, geez, on the back of that, Melbourne, and I'm sure a lot of Melbourne supporters out, but after that performance, and after the up and down season, after showing at stages this year some looking like they'd moved forward, I'm sure they've just about lost a lot of people.
Should Gary Lyon get more involved in the club, as some people are suggesting? He seems to be behind the scenes, a figurehead and a power broker.
Why? Because you're a champion of the club. Should you get behind your football team when you've got other interests outside of footy? He obviously loves the club, but if he doesn't want to get involved at the club, why should he? What does he owe the Melbourne Footy Club?
His loyalty?
He's loyal to the Melbourne Footy Club as a Melbourne player, but he doesn't need to get involved just because they're now struggling.
He seems to be.
I'm sure there's other past champions of that club that we don't talk about because Gary Lyon's in the media. We think that he should get more involved. I mean, have we ever seen Gary Lyon coach? Has he ever done any coaching courses?
Under 14s,
there you go. Has he been an assistant? Gary Lyon would be no more advanced than a young player that's, a young kid that's just gone into coaching this year.
Not as a coach. I'm saying get involved, board level. He seems to be a power broker who has Jim Stein's ear, and they're mates. And he's a power broker because he's in the media and he has a voice. Does he want to get involved in that type of stuff? That's that's a decision he has to make. I don't see why he has to, just because he has a voice in the media. That's a no then.
Yeah, no.
Let's talk about the footy itself. Collingwood and Essendon. The Pies were 30 points down early in the second quarter and won by 12 goals.
Went to the game, the Bombers were really good early. They made the most of their opportunities, played smart footy. But you always sense that Collingwood were coming. I actually had a function, spoke at half time, and thought that I actually got in a little bit of trouble because it was a half crowd, and I said, I think the Pies will still win by 10.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I was 2 goals out. They won by 12, didn't they?
They won by 74 points.
Yeah.
Did you find a TAB outlet at half time?
No, I didn't put a bet on. Wish I had have. Would have got not bad odds probably at half time for over 60 points.
You would have. Yeah.
Anyway, silly me.
Essendon were cruelled again by injury during the game and causing Mick Malthouse to say the Bombers have been slaughtered by the sub rule. Now, what are your views of that? Are you a supporter of the rule?
Look, I think the AFL, and I've always said the AFL have to take more or listen more to coaches and the players. I mean, if the coaches and players are saying that this rule is bothering them, then you want them to listen to those people. I mean, they know what's going on. Mick's probably saying that a little bit too.
Out of self-interest.
No, a little bit to take the pressure or sort of lighten the performance of his Magpies by saying that they were decimated by injury, wasn't that good a performance, basically to take the pressure off the Pies. I think Mick's a very smart man, and I think that's the main reason why he said that.
And he also likes making 140 interchanges a game, and under the new system you can't do it.
All of that, but I think it was more from Mick saying, you know what, the Pies, we're going okay, but Essendon really struggled in the second half because of that rule.
Yep.
So I think it's taking the pressure off the Pies. Mick's very clever.
Now, you're full of strong opinions today, which is great. Tell us about the next round of matches. Is interesting because we've got a couple of St Kilda play Freo at Etihad Stadium on Friday night. Sydney play Essendon at the same ground on Saturday. Both games could have a huge bearing on the 8.
Yeah, look, the St Kilda game v Freo look the vulnerable ones inside the 8 right now. St Kilda going okay. So, look, out of all the sides floating around that position, I think the Bombers, and I know I've said for them they'll miss out on the 8 this year, but the Bombers have the easiest draw out of all of the sides floating around. Fremantle have a really hard draw. Yep. They're the ones currently sitting in. You've got the Bombers, you've got the Kangaroos all sitting just outside. Like I said, the Bombers have the easier draw. Kangaroos have a fairly tough one coming home, as do Freo. So, real opportunity for the Bombers to make me eat my words.
Yeah.
They can make the 8.
And finally, Gold Coast play Geelong, the abattoir of the AFL these days. You go down there and you do get slaughtered.
They only played not all that long ago.
Yeah, they did. They played sort of 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But Gary Ablett returns to Caninia Park for the first time.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll get a rounding applause. He did a lot for that club, and he's done a lot for the Gold Coast. You've got to clap the Gold Coast and say what a remarkable season it's been. I never expected them to be as good as what they've been. Yeah. They take the game on. To lose by 20 odd points to St Kilda, to be leading Geelong at half time, to have the wins they've already had. I think it's just they're head and shoulders above Melbourne, Adelaide, Richmond, and Port Adelaide. They're head and shoulders above those sides already in their first year, which is a little bit dangerous for the rest of the competition this early. I think they've been remarkable, and I love the way they play footy. They take the game on, and
apart from the obvious candidates, Malthouse, Chris Scott, you would say Guy McKenna almost should be considered for Coach of the Year honours for what he's done. Is that what you're saying? Without putting words in your mouth?
Yeah, no, they've been very good. They've been good. Just quickly, the side no one's talking about is Hawthorn. Hawthorn, you've got Sam Mitchell leading all the media awards. No one's talking about him. You've got Hawthorn sitting in 3rd position, just travelling nicely. They're talking about the Blues, Geelong and Collingwood. The Hawks, just sitting there beautifully. I'd be a little bit worried about that.
Straight to the TAB.
Yep.
Wayne Carey, thanks very much for your provocative thoughts, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Provocative. Thanks, Charlie.